Well,
as you have articulated earlier.
That is a question for our military planners and thinkers as to how which branch of the military should be beefed up, should be strengthened.
But you will be the potential commander-in-chief of the Republic. So that decision will really be on your desk.
Nagbabalik ang SMNI Presidential Debate 2022. And this is our third and final round. And at this round, we'll have the panelists asking questions again from our candidates. And we'll be following the same format where we'll have 90 seconds for each candidate to answer a panelist question. And then they'll have 60 seconds for each candidate to react to the other candidate's answer. And then 30 seconds for rebuttal. And our first question will be coming from UP Professor Dr. Clarita Carlos.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, again, my question will be on defense and security. It's well known that Russia has indicated many times that it wants to train and exercise with our Philippine military. As a matter of fact, for the first time, it appointed a defense attaché at the Russian embassy here in Manila. This will, of course, require a status of forces agreement like what we have with the US and Australia. As our future chief executive, will you agree to a status of forces agreement with Russia?
This question will be addressed to Secretary Gonzales first, and then we're doing a round robin as we have throughout the night. So we'll have Secretary Gonzales, Senator Marcos, Secretary Abella, and then Calyodi.
I would appreciate if we have preliminary talks first, because in the first place, the system familiar to our armed forces is American. It's very, very difficult to immediately change systems. So it doesn't mean that we will not be open to something friendly with the Russians.
Senator Marcos?
Yeah, may I follow through that remark? But you know, remember, we have in fact committed to the ASEAN political security community, which is part of the troika of economic community and the social-cultural community. So that means eventually in the ASEAN, you will really have to deal with different doctrines of ASEAN 10. So, by the way, Russia is only first. I understand that China also wants to train with us. Vietnam wants to train with us, and Japan. I'm sure all these countries will have different doctrines. So, should we not open ourselves up to this eventuality rather than be hostage to American doctrine?
Well, I think we can begin by sending our military to train in Russia in the beginning, so that we can begin to adjust to these changing times. But until we have that kind of, it's very difficult to train when your systems do not match. I know that. So we begin with sending officers for training in Russia.
Thank you.
Secretary Abella?
Yes, I believe we need to calibrate our responses, especially with this new development, especially because our capabilities are asymmetrical. We're not on at par with them. So even in terms of capability and skills. On the other hand, we need to continue to develop our own internal capabilities so that we can maintain our independent foreign policy. And also, it's in agreement, I do agree that much of our military is land-based and should be, and at this stage, we should perhaps develop more naval capabilities.
Calyodi.
Katulad ng aking sinasabi kanina, ako yung nag-i-stick doon sa aking tindig na dapat ay maging independent tayo. At huwag tayong, lalo na sa usapin ng, military, na parang preparation for war, ay huwag na tayong makisangkot dyan. Malayo, hindi na natin kayang makipagsabayan sa kanila, malayo na tayo. At isa pa, yung gera ay wala tayong mapapala dyan. Ang makikinabang lang dyan ay mga korporasyon ng mga gumagawa ng bala at ng armas. Sila lang ang laging kumikita every time na magkakagera. Kaya sila yung laging nag-uudyok ng gera. Masang kung magkakaroon man ng gera, ang ating paggigirahin na yung problema nating kinakarap sa klima, na meron tayong climate emergency ngayon. Doon na lang natin ayain ang iba't ibang bansa sa mundo na itong ating harapin, yung krisis sa klima at yung krisis sa kabuhayan ng buong mundo, yung kagutuman, at huwag yung parang pagpapalakas ng armas natin para sa paghandaan ang pakikipaggera sa iba. Talo tayo dyan, walang nananalo dyan. Kundi ang nanalo dyan, ulitin ko, yung mga korporasyon ng mga gumagawa ng bala at armas. Sila ang masaya dyan. Tayong mamayang sa mundo ay malungkot dahil giba, wasak ang ating ekonomiya at kabuhayan.
Thank you, Calody. Professor Carlos, I can see you looking at me. Is there any follow-up question?
Well, gusto kong tanungin si Calyodi kung hinila ng Amerika ang paa natin dahil in-invoke niya ang Mutual Defense Treaty dahil hindi mo pa siya in-scuttle. Ano magiging reaction mo bilang Commander-in-Chief?
Immediately nga, kapag ako'y magiging gobyerno kinabukasan, yun ang aking magiging kautusan na dapat i-revoke yung Mutual Defense Treaty, lahat yan, pati yung LCAC, BFA, dahil ang hirap nating magdesisyon kung parang merong baril na nakatutok sa ating ulo. Kinakailangan, kati yung mga agreement natin sa China, putulin natin yan. At ang mas ipalaganap natin, makiisa tayo sa iba't ibang bansa na nananawagan ng kapayapaan sa mundo. At yung nananawagan ng paglaban sa klima. At yung panawagan ng buong mundo na nananawagan na labanan yung kagutuman at inekwalidad sa ating bansa, dahil grabe na ang inekwalidad sa ating, hindi na sa bansa, sa buong mundo. Yun ang ating samahang mga bansang ganon, at hindi yung mga bansang naghahanda sa gera.
Yes, but if we look at realpolitik, the realities on the ground, what if the senators are not with you in abrogating all these treaty commitments?
Kung yung ating mga senador at congressman ay mga gerero din, utak gera, ay di gamitin natin yung provision sa ating konstitusyon na People's Initiative. Gamitin natin yun para nang sa ganun ay ipasa yung isang batas na magbibigay proteksyon sa kabuhayan ng ating mga mamayan at yung proteksyon sa krisis ng klima at pagtatakwil doon sa lumalaganap na gera na ang magtatamasa lamang naman ay yung mga korporasyon at mga kapitalista na namumuhunan diyan.
Salamat.
Thank you, Calyodi. And we'll move on to the next question. Yes.
This is a follow-up question to Calyodi.
Well, very appropriate. You're the next panelist to ask a question anyway, Attorney Rolex.
This is a follow-up to the question of Professor Carlos. Wala pa pong naipasa na batas sa People's Initiative. Wala akong naalala. In fact, sa dead letter law.
Sasagutin ko.
Yes, Calyodi.
Sisimulan ko.
Okay.
Senator Marcos.
Well, yes, we would have to look into what the status of forces agreement actually entails to our two countries between Russia and the Philippines, for the simple reason that it is an entirely novel concept for our two countries together. However, again, if we can see that there's an advantage to the Philippines for that, but you see, this is part of the effort that you, Professor, mentioned, that the superpowers are carving out against their spheres of influence. And in the same way that I spoke to you about the last question that concerned that, I do not think the spheres of influence model of the Cold War still applies. So we should be very wary of that. As a practical matter, if we are to train with all of those countries, then we could have a real logistical problem in our military, because the training is usually the beginnings of their hopefully supplying, or hopefully for the donor country, supplying us with military equipment. And so yes, it is good perhaps that we see what the different doctrine, that I'm talking doctrine and military doctrines are. But I think we still have to decide at some point, and what they, as the engineers call it, we have to freeze the design of our military and say we have decided to go with these pieces of equipment and with this military doctrine. That's with those who we have
Senator
trained
Marcos,
with.
time's up.
Yeah, as an adjunct to your remarks, shouldn't we also abolish the AFP as it is configured presently? Because, you know, that was designed during the American occupation, because we have new security interests, and therefore the doctrinal framework will also follow through. If you abolish the AFP, and as you have indicated, as four of you have indicated earlier, that it is really the sea which needs to be protected. And yet, you know, the bulk of your AFP consists of the army, which is running after insurgency, which is not its mandate, by the way. So shouldn't you be abolishing the AFP and putting a little bit more manpower and equipment on the Marines and the Navy,
Well,
as you have articulated earlier?
That is a question for our military planners and thinkers as to how which branch of the military should be beefed up, should be strengthened.
But you will be the
however-
potential commander-in-chief of the Republic.
Precisely.
So that decision will really be on your desk,
Yes,
not on
it will.
the AFP.
Yes, it will. And we will look at the situation at the time that these are being proposed. But again, we have to go back to the very practical matter of how our military operates. I cannot see how the Philippines will continue to exist if we do not have the AFP. And therefore, the idea of abolishing the AFP might be a logical conclusion, but it is not a practical one.
Yeah, on a personal note, I wrote a paper on abolishing the AFP, and I'm sure I got so many enemies. But yes, if you're interested to read that paper, I can share it with you.
Yes, please, ma'am. I would be very, very interested.
Hello guys, don't forget to watch, share, like and subscribe to OFW Good Times.